This is my experience with the Datura, or angel trumpets as we call them. A few years back I had heard of the angel trumpet. A few friends of mine I had known had done this and overdosed, but me, being very curious, told some friends, and they went and picked some flowers. We boiled them and made a few gallons of them. We then mixed the juices diluted with a little water and tea or Kool-Aid. We would drink it by the cup. It was the weirdest thing I had ever experienced. I was sitting in my room after I had done it. I then started hallucinating. I saw a monster come at me with a spike sticking out of its head. I saw a huge bird trying to peck my eyes out. I saw millions of cockroaches pouring out of my bathroom wall. I saw an alien when me and some of my friends walked to the corner store. I was having conversations with people who were not at my house, and we were in a whole other setting, for example, at school. I don't remember half of the things that happened. My brother and his friends said one night when I did it, they came in the house and saw me pouring coffee and hot boiling water and milk and sugar all over my kitchen floor. They asked me what I was doing, and I replied, making coffee. I do not even remember this happening. When drinking this, after a while, it gave me the worst cotton mouth imaginable. My throat was so dry that it actually hurt. We were only about 14 or 15 when we had discovered this. As a joke, we made this guy drink 32 ounces of the angel trumpets. He was at our house. His dad came and picked him up. Next thing we know, his father called my parents and said that the guy on the angel trumpets walked back to our house, and he came looking for him and found him passed out in the front yard. He then brought him to the hospital, which is near my house, and he had overdosed. He came out of it though. I talked to him a few weeks later, and he said that he saw a lot of the same things I had seen, like insects. He said I was in the room at the hospital talking to him amongst many other things. I really would not suggest doing this. It's really visual with all the things you see, but it can be so dangerous. You don't know what you are doing or where you are. It is very frightening when you think about it. Also, if you do too much, you can overdose like a few of the people I knew who did it. And if not, you can end up making coffee on the floor. I would stick to pot or other drugs that you can control. For this, you cannot control. I am writing this in the hopes that it will prevent someone else from severe injury. This is not a report of how I am affected by the drug Datura, but my nephew, who is in very, very bad shape. My 16-year-old nephew is currently in the ICU, and still after 36 hours is incoherent and nearly comatose. He hasn't recognized any family members or his surroundings since this started. His pupils are dilated nearly the size of dimes. He is apparently living in hell, as demonstrated by his horrified facial expressions of bulging eyes and uncontrollable trembling. He is continuously doing sporadic mumblings with paranoid darting eyes and scanning around the room looking at what we can only imagine. It is very obvious that he is experiencing true terror and horrific scenes of hallucination. His heart rate is hovering around 115 to 130 BPM, and his mouth is coated with blood. He is shaking, agitated and in 4-point restraints. For the first 9 hours of his high, we were in the dark about what could be the cause of this. Ambulance drivers, fire chief, police all said it was drugs, but the test results all came back negative. Blood and urine samples negative. This all led to the doctors to believe this was a neurological issue, and my nephew was taken for a CAT scan, where results still came back negative. We all feared the worst: brain damage, aneurysm, etc. Every terrifying thought came to mind. All family members were called in the middle of the night, where we all rushed to the emergency room. We cried, worried, and prayed. The younger children witnessed the chaos and won't soon forget. If you want to try this drug, please consider what the effects of this on others will be. $20,000 hospital bills at least, ICU for days, CAT scan, ambulance, specialists. Please take warning. We can't determine how much he took as a plant with 4 pods that were found in his room. We still don't know if he will pull out of this or not. The doctors cannot say if there will be any long-term effects. We are so worried. This is a fair warning. Do not try this stuff. I made that mistake and ended up in the hospital. They didn't know what it was that I described, and when they called poison control, they were told it was something like Egyptian weed. I knew that's not what it was, but of course, they know it all. I had to have my stomach pumped, and it was not at all a pleasant experience. I had boiled a whole lot of seeds in 1.5 cups of water and drank that liquid that was left over. It felt at first like I was drunk and was great, because it was like being drunk without drinking bad-tasting alcohol. Then it got worse. My pupils got huge, and my brother saw me, and I could hardly speak. He noticed something was wrong, and so did I. I couldn't even swallow, and my mouth was really dry. I felt really sick, and he ended up taking me to the hospital. They ran a drug screen while I was there, and my parents got it, and now I'm in a lot of trouble. Wasn't at all worth it. I urge anyone wondering about it to not try it. There are way better substances out there than Datura. I was surprised when I found that Datura inoxia, or stramonium, grows near my house. I read a lot about the psychoactive powers of Datura, and I had a plan to make an experiment by myself. So I collected some leaves and flowers and dried them. I also picked Datura seeds. First I ingested 10 mature seeds and waited for 2 hours. Nothing happened. I then thought that the plant was not a Datura, but that maybe it contained low amounts of the drug. I then rolled a cigarette with tobacco and 1 medium leaf and smoked it. I waited for about 1 hour, and I felt a dry throat, but apart from this, no change in perception. I then smoked 100 non-mature seeds mixed with tobacco and waited an hour. What I noticed was dryness in my mouth and in my throat. I also felt drunk and lightheaded. I had to go to urinate and drink more often than usual. But I didn't really realize that the drug was already working. This is, I think, one of the most dangerous aspects of Datura. You don't notice that you're entering Datura reality. She tricks you. She tricked me. She almost killed me. So I was thinking, the dosage isn't correct, and I had to take some more to experience the thing. I then picked up a lot of leaves and flowers, blended all of it, and made a tea out of it. The whole thing boiled for about 10 minutes. I got 2 cups of tea. It was very bitter. After half an hour later, I felt extremely drunk. The colors of the world changed. Everything was beautifully pastel-like. I checked my pupils. They were enormous. My hands were extremely dry and red. Then panic took over. I thought I will die because I overdosed and that the worst part is still coming. I wanted to call the hospital, but I didn't know the phone number. Then I checked in the book for that damn number, but I couldn't read. I was really fucked. I then asked my brother, who was sober, to make the phone call for me. I remember him dialing a number, and the very next moment I was standing in front of the phone staring at it and wondering what the hell I was doing. Somehow I called a taxi and got to the hospital. But there, nobody knew what Datura was. I could barely speak. I was forgetting what I was saying in the middle of a sentence. Fuck. The doctors then made me drink charcoal, but I complained that it had an ugly taste and I refused to drink all the stuff. Then they attached me to an IV and a life monitor. I was hallucinating. At that time, things weren't scary anymore. It wasn't pleasant either. It was weird. Very weird. Around midnight, I stripped myself of the IV and all the other wires, put my clothes on, and wanted to leave the hospital immediately. I was arguing with 2 or 3 nurses as they were trying to stop me and put me back in my bed. The interesting part is that I thought that I was sober and capable of making such decisions. I didn't feel agitated or bad at all, just a bit drunk and shaky. I then fought with the nurses and finally escaped. Then they screamed at me that I had to sign a certain document before I leave, so I signed up that damn piece of paper and got out of that hospital. I returned home with a taxi. The next days I felt drunk and lightheaded. My shit was black. I was losing blood via internal bleeding. I am still recovering. Be careful with this stuff. You never notice entering the Datura experience, and here Datura easily tricks you. Be careful. After hearing my friends talk about their experience with Jimson weed, I figured I would like to be able to tell a story as crazy as them. I didn't know exactly what I was doing, so I just ate one large ball, a little smaller than the size of a baseball. Flesh, seeds, spikes, and all. It was the most terrible tasting thing I have ever eaten in my life. After about 10 to 15 minutes or so, I could feel almost like a hot poison was running through every blood vessel in my body, and I started to feel a bit strange. It was getting to be late summer, and the sun was going down, and I left my jacket at home, so I decided to run back and get it. Big mistake. Running caused my trip to accelerate, and as I was running home, there was a large silent vortex forming in the middle of the road. It was starting to swallow everything that was on the opposite side of the street. It was almost like the cars and buildings were painted on a big sheet of cloth and the vortex was pulling it down. Kind of like the magic trick where you pull cloth out from under dishes into the hole. I can't remember getting to my house, but I do remember my mom finding me lying in the middle of the living room talking gibberish. Needless to say, she freaked and took me to the hospital. I guess I had told her that I was shooting heroin into the ends of my toes. She had to help me to the car because I couldn't walk, and my mouth was so dry and it was painful. And after I got in the passenger seat of my mom's car, people I knew were appearing to me in the space between my legs under the dashboard. They were all curled up, with their knees under their chins, asking me where I was going. And as soon as I would start to answer them, they would vanish in a puff of silver sparkles. When I reached the hospital, I couldn't remember my name anymore, and I could just barely understand where I was. This was the beginning of the real intense hallucinations. A lady and her kid were sitting across from me and my mom in the waiting room. At this point, I was having severe audio hallucinations. I thought there were people talking to me all the time, but I couldn't really tell what they were saying. Every now and then I would yell, "What?" at the lady and her kid after yelling, "What are you saying to me?" A couple of times she got freaked out and left. When it was our turn to see the nurse at the front desk, I could no longer walk at all, and I thought my mom was a fat man that ran a French fry wagon on the roof of the hospital. When the nurse began to ask my mom questions concerning my condition, I would butt in loudly saying that this French fry guy should come over and meet my mom sometime because they looked a lot alike. The next thing I remember is sitting on a hospital bed, hooked up to heart machines. I kept thinking that the heart monitors stuck to my chest were someone's headphones, and that I needed to return them. I wasn't very happy being in the hospital, that is to say when I wasn't hallucinating that I was elsewhere. For example, partying with my friends, sailing my yacht down the streets of London, reading ancient books in enormous libraries. So when I was cognizant of the fact that I was in the hospital, I was looking for ways to escape. I had noticed that there was a space where the walls didn't meet with the floor, and I figured I could get out through there. My wife, at the time she was my girlfriend, said she can't remember how many times they had to drag me back onto the bed after finding me trying to leopard crawl my way through an imaginary space in the wall. I remember one instance when I was sitting on the bed where I could hear a very loud rusty screeching noise. Out of the tops of my eyes I could see a garage door opening in my forehead. Once it was up and had retracted back into my skull, small black triangles started flying out of my head, hundreds of them. I then looked over at my girlfriend and asked her why she was crying so much. At that point in time I couldn't remember her name, and she appeared to be a fat, balding man with a greenish atomic glow. Sometime after that, I met a friend for the first time that night, which would stay with me for the remaining 3 days of my insanity. He was a small albino chihuahua with a large Cheshire cat-type smile and red eyes. He was always asking me if I wanted to smoke, but his mouth never moved and he was always smiling. Whenever he went off to find me smokes, he would always return a couple of minutes later with a single cigarette hanging out of his pointed-toothed smile. The aggravating thing was that every time I would light one and take a drag, it would immediately burn all the way down to the brown filter and then melt into hot orange wax all over my hand. My memories of this trip are very fragmented. I can only recall certain things I had done in the 3 days that I forgot my name. I remember nurses asking me by my name, "Rob, do you remember your name?" And I would answer, "Of course I don't. Stop asking such stupid questions." One time my girlfriend was asked to bring me into the bathroom to help get a urine sample out of me. But when she went to help Mr. Happy Pants out of his house, I smacked her hand away violently, thinking that it had been a hungry cat. I can't really remember leaving the hospital with my mom, but I do remember that strange green fat man sitting beside me in the back seat crying his face off because I couldn't remember who he was. What a fucking joke. That's about all I can remember. I think I came close to a lethal dose that night. It definitely had the symptoms of being poisoned. Even having moisture from ice chips touch my tongue was enough to make me cry from pain. I highly recommend using caution when taking the substance. I think I just got lucky.